think I have seen nothing. Go to the foot of the great stairs yourself. As I live, I saw it."
"Saw what? Tell us, fair maid, what thou hast seen," said Frederick. "Can your highness listen," said Manfred, "to the deliriums of a silly wench, who has heard stories of apparitions until she believes them?" "This is more than fancy," said the Marquis. "Her terror is too natural and too strongly impressed to be the work of imagination. Tell us, fair maiden, what is it has moved thee thus?"
"Yes, my lord, thank your greatness," said Bianca. "I believe I look very pale. I shall be better when I have recovered myself. I was going to my Lady Isabella's chamber by his Highness's order."
"We do not want the circumstances," interrupted Manfred. "Since his Highness will have it so, proceed, but be brief."
"Lord, your Highness thwarts one so," replied Bianca. "I fear my hair. I am sure I never in my life... Well, as I was telling your greatness, I was going by his Highness's orders to my Lady Isabella's chamber. She lies in the watchet-coloured chamber, on the right hand, one pair of stairs. So when I came to the great stairs, I was looking on his Highness's present here."
"Grant me patience," said Manfred. "Will this wench never come to the point? What imports it to the Marquis that I gave thee a bauble for thy faithful attendance on my daughter? We want to know what thou sawest."
"I was going to tell your Highness," said Bianca, "if you would permit me. So as I was rubbing this ring, I am sure I had not gone up 3 steps, but I heard the rattling of armour, for all the world such a clatter as Diego says he heard when the giant turned him about in the gallery chamber."
"What giant is this, my lord?" said the Marquis. "Is your castle haunted by giants and goblins?"
"Lord, what, has not your greatness heard the story of the giant in the gallery chamber?" cried Bianca. "I marvel his Highness has not told you. Mayhap you do not know there is a prophecy—"
"This is trifling intolerable," interrupted Manfred. "Let us dismiss this silly wench, my lord. We have more important affairs to discuss." "By your favour," said Frederick, "there are no trifles. The enormous sabre I was directed to in the woods, yon casque, its fellow, are these visions of this poor maiden's brain."
"So Jaquez thinks, may it please your greatness," said Bianca. "He says the moon will not be out without our seeing some strange revolution. For my part, I should not be surprised if it was to happen tomorrow; for as I was saying, when I heard the clattering of armour, I was all in a cold sweat. I looked up, and if your greatness will believe me, I saw upon the uppermost banister of the great stairs a hand in armour as big as big. I thought I should have swooned. I never stopped until I came hither. Would I were well out of this castle. My Lady Matilda told me but yester morning that her Highness Hippolita knows something."
"Thou art an insolent," cried Manfred. "Lord Marquis, it much misgives me that this scene is concerted to affront me. Are my own domestics subordinate to spread tales injurious to my honour? Pursue your claim by manly daring, or let us bury our feuds as we proposed by the intermarriage of our children. But trust me, it ill becomes a prince of your bearing to practise on mercenary wenches." "I scorn your imputation," said Frederick. "Until this hour I never set eyes on this damsel. I have given her no jewel. My lord, your conscience, your guilt accuses you. And would you throw the suspicion on me? But keep your daughter, and think no more of Isabella. The judgments already fallen on your house forbid me matching into it."
Manfred, alarmed at the resolute tone in which Frederick delivered these words, endeavoured to pacify him. Dismissing Bianca, he made such submissions to the Marquis, and threw in such artful encomiums on Matilda, that Frederick was once more staggered. However, as his passion was of so recent a date, it could not at once surmount the scruples he had conceived. He had gathered enough from Bianca's discourse to persuade him that heaven declared itself against Manfred. The proposed marriages too removed his claim to a distance, and the principality of Otranto was a stronger temptation than the contingent reversion of it with Matilda. Still he would not absolutely recede from his engagements, but proposing to gain time, he demanded of Manfred if it was true in fact that Hippolita consented to the divorce. The Prince, transported to find no other obstacle, and depending on his influence over his wife, assured the Marquis it was so, and that he might satisfy himself of the truth from her own mouth. As they were thus discoursing, word was brought that the banquet was prepared. Manfred conducted Frederick to the great hall, where they were received by Hippolita and the young princesses. Manfred placed the Marquis next to Matilda, and seated himself between his wife and Isabella. Hippolita comported herself with an easy gravity, but the young ladies were silent and melancholy. Manfred, who was determined to pursue his point with the Marquis in the remainder of the evening, pushed on the feast until it waxed late, affecting unrestrained gaiety, and plying Frederick with repeated goblets of wine. The latter, more upon his guard than Manfred wished, declined his frequent challenges, on pretence of his late loss of blood; while the Prince, to raise his own disordered spirits, and to counterfeit unconcern, indulged himself in plentiful draughts, though not to the intoxication of his senses. The evening being far advanced, the banquet concluded. Manfred would have withdrawn with Frederick, but the latter, pleading weakness and want of repose, retired to his chamber, gallantly telling the Prince that his daughter should amuse his Highness until himself could attend him. Manfred accepted the party, and to the no small grief of Isabella, accompanied her to her apartment. Matilda waited on her mother to enjoy the freshness of the evening on the ramparts of the castle. Soon as the company were dispersed their several ways, Frederick, quitting his chamber, inquired if Hippolita was alone, and was told by one of her attendants, who had not noticed her going forth, that at that hour she generally withdrew to her oratory, where he probably would find her. The Marquis, during the repast, had beheld Matilda with increase of passion. He now wished to find Hippolita in the disposition her lord had promised. The portents that had alarmed him were forgotten in his desires. Stealing softly and unobserved to the apartment of Hippolita, he entered it with a resolution to encourage her acquiescence to the divorce, having perceived that Manfred was resolved to make the possession of Isabella an unalterable condition before he would grant Matilda to his wishes. The Marquis was not surprised at the silence that reigned in the Princess's apartment. Concluding her, as he had been advertised, in her oratory, he passed on. The door was ajar, the evening gloomy and overcast. Pushing open the door gently, he saw a person kneeling before the altar. As he approached nearer, it seemed not a woman, but one in a long woollen weed, whose back was toward him. The person seemed absorbed in prayer. The Marquis was about to return, when the figure, rising, stood some moments fixed in meditation, without regarding him. The Marquis, expecting the holy person to come forth, and meaning to excuse his uncivil interruption, said, "Reverend Father, I sought the Lady Hippolita." "Hippolita!" replied a hollow voice. "Camest thou to this castle to seek Hippolita?" And then the figure, turning slowly round, discovered to Frederick the fleshless jaws and empty sockets of a skeleton wrapped in a hermit's cowl. "Angels of grace, protect me!" cried Frederick, recoiling. "Deserve their protection," said the spectre. Frederick, falling on his knees, adjured the phantom to take pity on him. "Dost thou not remember me?" said the apparition. "Remember the wood of Joppa." "Art thou that holy hermit?" cried Frederick, trembling. "Can I do aught for thy eternal peace?" "Wast thou delivered from bondage," said the spectre, "to pursue carnal delights? Hast thou forgotten the buried sabre, and the behest of heaven engraven on it?" "I have not, said Frederick. "But say, blessed spirit, what is thy errand to me? What remains to be done?" "To forget Matilda," said the apparition, and vanished. Frederick's blood froze in his veins. For some minutes he remained motionless; then falling